Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for this segment, we have for Cybersecurity Month, actually, which takes place in October and now in its 19th year. It's a collaboration between government and private industry to raise awareness about digital security and empower everyone to protect their personal data from digital forms of crime. Chris Lehman is with me. He's the CEO of Safeguard Cyber to discuss how natural language understanding, or what's known as NLU, can be a game changer for businesses in the fight against cyber attacks. It is great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Thanks for having us.
Let's talk about cyber attacks. They're becoming more frequent, more costly for businesses, from data to extortion attacks. Why does this keep happening at an increasing rate?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, first of all, people need to understand that the challenge with cybersecurity is that attackers are constantly evolving the techniques that they use to execute the attack. And they're no longer relying on traditional methods such as delivering a malicious file or malicious link. They still do those things sometimes, but those techniques have evolved, and increasingly they're using something called language-based attacks. These are social engineering attacks that use impersonation, deception, urgency to try and convince their target to do something that they shouldn't. And as the industry evolves, Safeguard Cyber's lives at the intersection of some of the biggest trends and threats that organizations are facing. We know that human beings are always the most vulnerable element of any cybersecurity strategy. No matter how much training we do, no matter how much awareness is created, human beings are somewhat naive, and the human eye can't detect a lot of the more sophisticated attacks that they face on a day-to-day basis. And the data backs this up. We know that 82% of all breaches that happened last year were the result of the exploit of human vulnerability. Number two, we know that the way we communicate and the places where we do business have also changed. It's no longer just about email. We're using collaboration applications. We're using messaging applications. We're using social channels to engage with customers, partners, fellow employees. And the problem is, and the challenge in the security industry is that by and large, security organizations haven't put the same level of controls in place in these new communication channels that they have in traditional channels like email.
Yeah, I mean, it's coming over text and WhatsApp. And you're right, to your point that people are vulnerable. I get stuff all the time. Your Amazon account's been compromised or your bank account's been compromised. And sometimes these institutions do communicate with us via text. And it's not always easy to establish, is this for real? Is it not for real? I mean, it feels like it's everywhere now. So what is the cyber industry doing to try and solve these problems?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, you can't protect what you can't see, right? So enterprises, corporations need to put the same level of visibility on these new communication channels that they have in these traditional channels. I mean, very recently, Take-Two, which is the creator of one of the most popular video games in the world, Grand Theft Auto, and Uber were the victims of social engineering attacks that took place over multiple modern communication channels, like the collaboration channel Slack, like WhatsApp. And these are channels that, as I mentioned before, by and large don't have security visibility on them. And their targets were socially engineered on those channels and tricked into changing passwords and providing information that they shouldn't. So cybersecurity organizations need to start with visibility into these new channels, which we know your employees are using.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit scary when you start thinking about autonomous vehicles. I mean, you certainly don't want that kind of system hacked, that's for sure. How can natural language understanding, NLU, be a game changer for businesses?
Sure. Well, traditional cybersecurity technologies do something called behavioral analysis. And what behavioral analysis does, without getting too technical, is basically looks for anomalies in something called metadata. And metadata helps you understand where an individual is located, who that individual is, when they're communicating, but it's attributes about communication. What natural language understanding does is actually look inside of these communication channels and analyze the text of the conversation itself. So we can detect threats that are language-based that traditional security technologies just weren't designed to pick up or detect. And we do this because natural language understanding is a general purpose technology, but we've optimized it to help detect security threats. And this is through the use of machine learning
Right.
and artificial intelligence.
That was my question to you next. Does this encompass some sort of machine learning? So, and this is what you do at Safeguard Cyber. You're developing this NLU technology.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've actually been developing it over the last 10 years. So it's very mature, it's very effective, but it's a new way to detect and catch attackers that by and large hasn't been deployed by large enterprises just yet.
Right, and us as consumers, the best thing that we can do is remain vigilant and report as much of it as we can.
Absolutely. I mean, individual users, there's a couple of basics that you can always do to help protect yourself, like strong passwords, change your passwords on a regular basis, pay attention to the types of messages that you're opening. And then corporations, like I said, really have an obligation to start to protect these channels that their employees are using. And that, again, starts with visibility and monitoring the applications that their employees are using today to communicate.
All right, Chris, all great stuff. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.